Hey, everybody. Israel has been terrorized by Islamic extremists. Obviously, many of us have heard this, but entitled Americans are supporting these terrorists. Seriously. We're going to cover that today here and more on Speechless. Thanks for tuning in. Hey, everybody. Obviously, this is my live radio show that I do on Sundays from 3 to 5. We're going to be live here within the next 2-ish minutes, but I hope you got a little something out of that intro. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, guys, almost to 1,000. So subscribe and also share this with your friends. Please, share this with your friends, guys. And let's get that comment section going. I want to know what you guys think about all of these entitled young Americans. It's insane to me what they're saying, doing, especially in response to all of this. Hey, how's it going, Connor? Good to see you. Sorry I never responded to your DM, or maybe I did, but no, I was not at the homecoming parade. But yes, I was in town, but I was just very busy. So, but I always appreciate you tuning in because obviously you're fun opposition to have. Let's get to the live show. Hey, Bloomington Normal. Welcome back to Speechless on Cities 92.9, the news and talk of Bloomington Normal and beyond. I'm your host, Phares, 22-year-old conservative college student from Illinois State University. I love going to school there. Yes, I've faced some backlash, but we're going to get into a lot of things that have been going on in the college universe today, everybody. But first, I want to remind you guys that you could be listening on your radio, and if you're driving, totally get it. If you're on the app, I totally get that too. But you could also be interacting with me in the studio as well. You could be going on to Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, Twitter, or Rumble. All you got to do is look up Speechless Kev. I should be one of the first things that come up. And you can go watch me in the studio and we could interact. You can leave comments. I'll interact with you during the breaks and everything. And we can have a great looking time on that. And you can go on there and like this video, subscribe to the channel, comment what you think, and share it with your friends. First, before we get into all the fun things about how crazy some people in my generation have become in their support of terrorists, I do want to give a big shout out to Paul Garcia Productions. Paul Garcia Productions out of Central Illinois creates amazing and stunning video footage and video productions for local businesses in the Illinois area so that your business can get more business. If you want your business to get more business, go check out Paul Garcia Productions today. You can find, if you're watching online on YouTube, you can find all of his links and everything in the description of this video. And he just does amazing work. Love Paul. He's a great guy. And he's been a longtime supporter of this show. He's been helping us actually make it so we can bring you this video content. So thank you so much, Paul Garcia and Paul Garcia Productions, for that. But let's get right on into this, okay? So there have been, so obviously we all know about the Palestinian Hamas attack on Israel. And why do I put Palestine and Hamas together? Well, Hamas makes up about at least half of the political system in Palestine, which Palestine isn't really a defined country. Its territory is constantly shifting. It is not defined. Israel is defined. There is a clear Israeli territory. Palestine is undefined. That's absolute fact, period. The Israeli-Palestinian conflict has been going on for a very long time, back since before 1948, but 1948 is I believe it's 1948 is when a lot of people put the date on it, because that's when Israel became a clearly defined state. But it's been going on for a long time, and from everything that I know about it, Israel is... people always try to overcomplicate it. They try to make this seem like it's some super complicated issue. And yes, there's a lot of history to it that can make it a little bit more complex, but it's pretty simple. If Palestine and Hamas were to stop fighting, then there would be peace. If Israel were to stop fighting, then the Jewish community in the Middle East would be no more. They would be no more. There would be no Israel. Israel on multiple occasions has tried to sit down to the table and create peace talks with Palestine, for which every single time, Palestinians have said no, because it would not include, it would try to split up some territory so that they could share it and be peaceful with one another, but Palestine wouldn't have it, because Palestine wants that entire territory. And if you look at some of these protests, they want the Jewish community eradicated, and they advocate for this. They do. But as you've been inundated, I'm sure, with a lot of your news in the whole conflict, things that are going on over there, and we are going to cover a little bit of that as it relates to it. But what I really want to talk about is the extreme left. And I want to be clear, it's the extreme left. I know people that are Democrats, that are liberals, that are horrified by the actions Hamas has taken in Israel. They're horrified by it. Now, they might have more convoluted ideologies on how the peace should be obtained and what should happen. But it's really the extreme far leftists that are coming out in support of the terrorist attacks. You had BLM Chicago. Now, we all knew Black Lives Matter was an extremist organization. Despite, they're mostly peaceful, guys. Don't worry. If you watch CNN, they're mostly peaceful. Just billions of dollars of damages caused to many major American cities across the United States back in 2020. But no. Don't worry. They're mostly peaceful. They came out and tweeted very much in support. They tweeted a picture of a parachuter coming down with a Palestinian flag saying that they support Palestine. BLM Chicago did that. Yeah, seriously. There's been college kids that have been coming out, and I'm going to cover that stuff, but I want to do a recap. I did a video on my YouTube channel earlier this week of some people that have come out and at these pro-Palestine rallies, and the things that they're saying are not just blatantly false, they're also just horrific when you understand the context. And so a lot of them I actually can't play on the radio. Why? Because they are filled with obscenity. And I believe I found one that's clean. We're going to start it, and I'll use my dump button on the radio if it is not clean. But I believe it is clean. But basically, these leftists have said that they're A-okay with this terrorism, rape, murder, mass shootings, as long as it fits their agenda. They've even began putting out propaganda based on footage from these rallies that they've come out with and that they've come out for being in support of Palestine. So there's the People's Forum. This is the video I'm going to play, and we're going to listen to it on the radio, obviously. The People's Forum, which, again, a lot of these lefty organizations, they come out with, and honestly, it's not even just lefty organizations. A lot of political organizations come out with very vague titles that don't actually describe what they support. And so you have to actually look into them to see what they support. And even then, it can still be vague. But the People's Forum came out with this video. Who are they? Well, according to their website, we are a movement incubator for working class and marginalized communities to build unity across historic lines of division at home and abroad. They want to bring unity. That's what they claim. Bring unity across historic lines of division. They are an accessible, educational, and cultural space that nurtures the next generation of visionaries and organizers who believe that through collective action, a new world is possible. A new world is possible. That's where they really get to the heart of what they want. They want a new world. They want a revolution. They're revolutionaries. And not in the way that I might claim I'm a revolutionary or anything, or that Vivek Ramaswamy claims that he's a revolutionary, and the idea of we're going to change the next generation. We're going to try to win the hearts and minds of young people everywhere. No, not like that. A new world is possible. Think about that line, a new world is possible. When you listen to this video, we're going to make some pauses and everything of this literal propaganda video put out by this organization, the People's Forum. Yes, the People's Forum put this out. I believe it's clean again. If it's not, I'll dump it on the radio, and we're going to, and I'll make sure that we cover it, at least the general idea of it. But let's take a look and a listen to this propaganda video that's pro-Palestine, from pro-Palestine rallies, that was put out by the People's Forum.
Comrades and friends, yesterday the world woke up to incredible news.
The incredible news that she's referencing, the Hamas terrorist attacks, where babies were burned alive, beheaded, people kidnapped, raped, murdered, mass shootings. That's what the incredible news she's talking about.
The media will tell you that yesterday terrorists invaded Israel. But we know that actually what happened is that the oppressed people of Palestine broke out of the open-air prison.
Oh, okay. So she's going to diminish the terrorism because she comes out and says in there that the media will tell you that these were terrorist attacks, but in reality, it was just oppressed people standing up for themselves. Hmm. 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 Look, I don't care how oppressed you believe you are, how oppressed you believe you are. I, the rape of women, the murder of innocent children is no way to stand up to your oppressor. Because I can tell you, the people that are oppressing you are not the babies in their cribs that you burned alive. But be insane. Yeah, these people are absolutely insane. Keep listening.
The resistance has shattered the settler colonial project and demonstrated that the Palestinian people have the right to resist. Our heroes from Gaza have broken down the border fence, emptied settlements, and shaken the false confidence of its occupiers.
If you listen to the media in this country, you will think the war started 48 hours ago. We know this war started 75 years ago. This war started hundreds of years ago. When the British, when the Americans plotted to create Israel with no consultation to the Palestinian people.
So these people, these people hate America. These are people in America that are actively saying that this is all America's fault and that they support the side that would not be pro-America even in their own eyes. When the reality is if biblically, the Jewish people have a very much, at least Jewish Christian people, have much more of a right to Israel than an Islamic nation would. Historically, Judaism is the oldest recorded religion that's still practiced widespread. Older than the Islamic faith. So who would have the right? Who is technically there first? Who would have more of the right to that land? Probably the people that were there first, but okay.
Resistance against 75 plus years of brutal, horrific, Zionist war crimes.
So they have a problem when it's war crimes committed that they claim by Israel, but no problem when it's genuine war crimes and terrorism committed by Palestine. Okay. And then listen to this next word that is used.
Which amount to international genocide
They have
of the Palestinian people.
They have a problem with genocide.
We demand all allies stand in full and unequivocal solidarity with the
terrorists.
Palestinian struggle
terrorists.
for liberation and return.
Yeah, okay. So if you just start tuning in right now, I'm covering, this is a propaganda video put out by a far left organization called the People's Forum, outlining some of what is discussed and said at these political rallies that are pro-Palestine, pro-terrorism, and diminishing the actions taken by the Hamas terrorists. And obviously it's a lot of young people, a lot of people in my own generation that are supporting this kind of thing. Seriously. Actually supporting this kind of thing, diminishing the actions of terrorists and going after the Israelis for defending themselves. And they want to talk about genocide. Well, at one of the pro-Palestine rallies that was featured last week, this was the one, I believe it was hosted by the Democratic Socialists of New York. There was actually a Nazi flag shown on a phone. True story. Take a look at this picture if you're online, and if you're on the radio, you just have to listen to me. But seriously, there is a protester holding up Nazi insignia, meaning that, at least assumed, okay, maybe I'm just assuming that this is calling for the genocide of Jewish people. Maybe I'm just assuming. Or you could go watch the video of the Australia protest in Sydney, Australia, where pro-Palestinian protesters were actually screaming, "Gas the Jews." For real. A real thing that was being chanted at a pro-Palestinian protest in Australia was "Gas the Jews." And yet these terrorist apologists want to claim that Israelis, the ones who did not commit the terrorist attack, are the people that are advocating for genocide and that want a genocide. The people, Israelis, that have at multiple times tried to split up parts of their own territory to live in some level of coexistence and peace with Palestine, and Palestine every time is refused, those are the people, the Israelis, are the ones that want genocide. Really? Really? Interesting how the far left, who wants to call out any level of Nazi insignia at any conservative rally, whether it's like Charleston or plenty of other times, I'll admit there have been times in which Nazi insignia is brought to conservative rallies, and some claim that it's like far left activists that are trying to infiltrate. Very well might be. I don't know. I don't have the evidence for that. I wouldn't be surprised, but I don't have the evidence for that, so I'm not going to say it's true. But very funny how the far left will call that out every single time. They claim Trump is Hitler. They say I'm a Nazi or a fascist. Now openly supports Nazism and Jewish genocide as it relates to the Israel-Palestinian conflict. Seriously. They are actually advocating, many of them are actually advocating for this. Now, I want to get into, because it's not just these rallies. There's actually organization behind. It's not just a bunch of people going out to a rally in New York, Sydney, Australia, all over the country, all over the world. No, there are actual organizations on many college campuses that have come out in blatant support of Palestine and of these terrorist attacks. From the New York Post, more than 30 Harvard University student organizations are holding Israel, quote, entirely responsible for Hamas's mass slaughter, sparking outraged condemnation and calls by a congresswoman for the Ivy League school to denounce the abhorrent and heinous support of evil and terrorism. Thank God for that congresswoman who came out for that. But seriously, more than 30 Harvard University. We all know Harvard. When people talk about like the most prestigious university in America, one of them, the top Ivy League school, Harvard or Yale, they usually think of Harvard. And 30 of those people that are supposed to be the best and brightest have come out in support of terrorists. And there's a lot to this story, and I want to break it down for you guys. I want to break down, actually interesting, there was a Jewish student organization, an actual Jewish student organization that signed on to this, to be pro-Palestine, pro-Hamas attacks on Israel. And we're going to break down why they did that. Why they did that, what it means. We're going to break down what is actually going on in my generation, what is going on our college campuses that has led to this. But we still have 7 more segments. This is my first of 8 for today, guys. 2 hours, 7 more segments to break all of that down. And we are going to do that. We got other stories to cover here about the parallel economy, different things regarding Israel, Palestine. What should we do as Americans? Who should we support? How should we support them? What is to be done? But all of that is going to come on more and more as we cover Speechless. Everybody, I'm your host, Kev Phares, and we got more to cover here, but I do have to take a break on the radio. Don't forget, you can go check me out on Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, Twitter, Rumble, all of those things. All you got to look up is Speechless Kev. I should be the first thing that comes up, and I'll be right there ready to talk to you guys. Me looking at you, you looking at me, and we'll be having a good looking time. Everybody, we'll be right back with more Speechless on Cities 92.9, the news and talk of Bloomington Normal and beyond. Hey, everybody. Let's get to these comments here. I see you guys in the comment section. Thank you so much for tuning in. Let's see what some of you guys have going on. Oklahoma Chicken Cam, always great to see you. Guillotine, always coming out with some very spicy opinions. And I'm going to hit on that a little bit because France banned pro-Palestine protests. And I'm going to talk about that. And I have an interesting opinion on it. Am I participating in No Shave November since you wimped out of Sober October? Ha! You're funny. I believe Sober October is made up by lefties that don't want anybody to have any fun. Truth. No Shave November. I can, but it's not going to look good, and it's also I can't grow a very, very good beard. This is 100% true, and I have a story on that too. I have a story on that, which I think is great. Disgusting BLM supporters, absolutely guillotine. Honestly, yes. At this point, yes. 100% agree. I don't know what tanky means. I haven't looked that one up. I'd love if you could, I can Google it and stuff, but I'd love if you could expound upon that a little bit. Reinstate the draft. Man, like in America, you think we should be sending our own people to die? I'm going to talk about that because I don't necessarily think that this is America's war to fight entirely. I'm wondering what you mean by this. I mean, in terms of if you're talking about the fact that Obama gave a significant level of funding to Iran in his nuclear deal with them, then maybe, because it's been confirmed, at least reports show that Hamas has been heavily supported by Iran financially, militarily, and verbally. So that's a possibility. But if you mean something else, I don't know. But maybe. Also kind of crazy how on September 11th, Joe Biden sends $6 billion to Iran as a part of a hostage swap. And then this happens a month later. How did that happen? All right, I think we're coming back. And we are back with Speechless on Cities 92.9, the news and talk of Bloomington Normal and beyond. I'm your host, Kev Phares, 22-year-old conservative college student, obviously here from Illinois State University, host of Speechless here on Cities 92.9, but I also host this on YouTube, Facebook, Twitch, Twitter, Rumble, where all you have to do is go look up on your computer, on your phone, Speechless with Kev, and I should be the first thing that comes up. And you can see me live here in studio. And if you want to get in on this conversation, everybody, don't forget that you can text or call in at 309-451-9299. Text or call in at 309-451-9299. I'd love to know what you have to say, get you in on the conversation, because what is going on is absolutely insane. A lot of people in Congress, as well as young people my age, people in college, some of which are supposed to be the best and brightest, the ones with the highest GPAs, ACT scores, going to go on to do the big things in the world. They're supporting Hamas, the terrorists that slaughtered innocent civilians, raped, pillaged, murdered like savages. Yeah, I'm not afraid of using that word for these people. Savages. To innocent Israeli civilians. That's what they did. And more than 30 Harvard University student organizations are holding Israel entirely responsible for Hamas's mass slaughter of Israelis. Yes, 30 Harvard University student organizations. In a letter titled Joint Statement by Harvard Palestine Solidarity Groups on the Situation in Palestine, 31 student organizations, including the Ivy League's affiliate of Amnesty International, meaning what's supposed to be more of a peaceful organization, condemned Israel even as its residents are kidnapped, and more than 700 have been killed. The number is even higher since this article. But over 700 have been killed by the terrorist organization. What did this joint statement say? It said, we, the undersigned student organizations, hold the Israeli regime entirely responsible for all unfolding violence. So all the violence that is going on, these Harvard students claim is at the fault of Israel. Today's events, when they're talking about the terrorist attacks, did not occur in a vacuum. For the last 2 decades, millions of Palestinians in Gaza have been forced to live in an open-air prison. Israeli officials promised to, quote, open the gates of hell, and the massacres in Gaza have already commenced. Palestinians in Gaza have no shelters for refuge and are nowhere to escape. In the coming days, Palestinians will be forced to bear the full brunt of Israel's violence. The apartheid regime is the only one to blame. Israeli violence has structured every aspect of the Palestinian existence for 75 years. That's an absolute lie. That is a lie. Look, I'm not going to sit here and say Israel's a saint. I know that they've done some things that are probably condemnable, but never once have they done anything as condemnable as what Hamas did last weekend. Never once. Hamas, supported by Israel and Iran, committed, I would say, one of the worst attacks on the Jewish people since the Holocaust. I would go as far to say that. Finishing out this statement from the Harvard students, from systemized land seizures to routine airstrikes, arbitrary detentions for military checkpoints, and enforced family separations to targeted killings, Palestinians have been forced to live in a state of death, both slow and sudden. What about the Israelis? Have they not also? This is a war. There are two sides to it. Today, the Palestinian ordeal enters into uncharted territory. The coming days will require a firm stand against colonial retaliation. We call on the Harvard community to take action to stop the ongoing annihilation of Palestinians. And interestingly enough, there was 31 groups from Harvard that signed on to this, one of which was a Jewish student organization. We're going to cover who they are, what they believe, and also what some CEOs had to say about America's best and brightest supporting Palestine and terrorists. Seriously. We're going to cover all that and more, but I got to take a quick break here on the radio. Everybody, listen to our sponsors. You can also go check me out on YouTube, Twitch, Twitter, or Rumble, or Facebook as well. All you got to do is look up Speechless with Kevin. I'll be right there looking at you, and you can comment, everything like that. Don't forget, you can also text or call in at 309-451-9299. I'd love to hear what you have to say, 309-451-9299. But we'll be right back with more Speechless on Cities 92.9, the news and talk of Bloomington Normal and beyond. I also see everybody. I'm getting a caller right now. So I'm going to take that real quick and screen them. Got a caller, everybody. We're going to bring him on in the next segment. Let's take a look at some of these comments here. DG, great to have you, and 100% agree with this statement. Okay, so this letter, and I'll restate it on I'll restate it on the radio too, because I want to make sure everybody gets clear with this. It's titled "The Joint Statement by Harvard Palestine Solidarity Groups on the Situation in Palestine." It is not clear who the original author is, but it is clear the student groups that have endorsed this. There's 31 of them. I'll put them on screen right now so you guys can read through them, but there's one that I'm specifically going to hammer in on at some point there is a list. I'll even take my banner off the top here. Brand. So you can read all of those. Those are all of the organizations that signed on. It's 31. I think at one point I said over 30. It is 31 exactly, at least according to what I saw. But those are all the student organizations right there that signed on to this. Yep. You can screenshot them. You can also go check out, you can see it's Ian Bremer is the one who posted this. And you can find his tweet and look through. You can read both the letter for yourself if you'd like to give that another look. Because he has that right here. And you can also check out the student groups. Yep. We're going to talk about the names and the CEOs and everything. I got to take this caller soon here, though. I'm going to see what they have to say. But don't worry. This is big. And I think, and I have a lot to break down with it too, because I think what just the whole idea of one, supporting the terrorists, but then two, holding them accountable will really show lefties, a taste of their own medicine, because they always like to say, I'm wearing a cancel culture shirt right now, right? Look, I don't believe necessarily in canceling somebody for a political opinion. But you do have to recognize, and this is something I kind of agree with lefties on, canceling entirely wrong. Canceling entirely is wrong. Doxing people, putting out their phone numbers, making sure people go to give them hate mail, wrong. I think that's wrong. But you should recognize that if you're going to make a controversial statement, especially one as controversial as supporting genuine terrorism, that, look, there might not be people that want to hire you. Just as much as I understand, I'm probably not going to be, I wouldn't be hired by some of these woke companies for taking the stance that a man is a man, a woman is a woman, and anybody who claims that you can change that is either themselves or supporting and normalizing mental illness. So, and I understand that I'm not going to necessarily be hired for that by some companies. Perfectly fine. I don't want to work for some place that doesn't support my values. But we're going to talk a lot more about all this. We're going to take the caller, everything like that, and include as many people in on this conversation. I have seen some of this. I don't remember exactly his opinion, but I did see Cenk Uygur from the Young Turks talking about it a bit. License, good to see you. All right, guys, we're about to come back. I'm going to take this caller. We're going to talk more about these Harvard students. Hey, and welcome back to Speechless on Cities 92.9, the news and talk of Bloomington Normal. I'm your host, Kev Phares, 22-year-old conservative college student out of Central Illinois, host of obviously Speechless here on Cities 92.9, the news and talk of Bloomington Normal and beyond. But I'm also on Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, Twitter, Rumble. So if you are listening on the radio right now and you're not driving, you can go check me out on Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, Twitter, Rumble. All you got to do is search up Speechless with Kev, and I should be the first thing that comes up, and you can see me here live in studio. You can also interact with the show. So far, what we've been talking about is these Harvard students, well, a lot of young people in America, privileged young people to be living in America, supporting Hamas terrorists and condemning Israel, blaming Israel for the violence that was committed unto them. And then also saying that they are in the wrong for defending themselves against these terrorist attacks. And I want you guys to be included in this conversation. There's a lot to break down with why young people are supporting this, what's going on, why would anybody support this kind of terrorism. We're going to talk about that. But as I always say, you can always, I want this to be a group conversation. Speechless is not just about me. It's about having these conversations. And whether you agree or disagree, that's fine. All I do is ask that if you're going to be involved in the conversation, keep it respectful. And especially on the radio, keep it clean. Keep it clean. I can't be getting FCC fines out here, but that's why I encourage you guys to text or call in at 309-451-9299. Again, that number is 309-451-9299. And I actually got a caller on the line during the break. His name is CJ. CJ, are you still there?
Yep, I'm still here. I hope you can hear me.
I can hear you fine. Thank you so much for calling in. So you were listening a little bit about what I was talking about. What are your thoughts?
One big thing that I always kind of wonder about, especially when you bring up these students from Harvard and other student organizations, especially on campuses, we know which way they lean, left,
Yep.
Usually. But when I see those students, when I interact with them, it's always kind of a catchphrase from it's cool, it's what's trendy. And when you really dig into it, you wonder, do they know who they're supporting or what these ideologies or agendas are really about? And we use the term Palestine, we keep throwing that around, but, bringing up the political parties in that region, especially the one who was involved in this terrorist attack, Hamas, to ask a student or someone left-leaning, like, what do you know about Hamas? We keep throwing out Palestine to people as a whole, but how about dividing the region by its political parties, and this one being Hamas, who's responsible, and to ask them what they could equate that to or how familiar they are. And you've already gone on some of their ideology, what they talk about. And I mean, literally the destruction of Israel is in their charter.
Mm-hmm.
But, to look at a college student and be like, what could we equate this to, or give an example of what would Hamas be if it were here in America? And my best example I could be is Hamas, look at that as literally being a form of the KKK if it were here in America. And that's the political party that's in charge over there in Hamas, the level of hatred that's in their heart. And to confront anybody about that, to be like, do you know who the players are? Do you know who's in charge and what their motivations are? Of people, when you would say, okay, I understand you support Palestine, but what about our actors here? Are you even aware of who's in charge? What's happening?
No, absolutely. And I think that's amazing. And I think the even harder thing for some of these young people to understand is because Hamas makes up basically 50% of their political system in Palestine. We do not have, look, as much as I'll rag on lefties and Democrats and such, even they are, they're nowhere near as bad as Hamas. And you bring up the KKK as a comparable. It's comparable in terms of, and even maybe a neo-Nazi organization in the United States would be comparable to the ideology of Hamas. But no one in America that is of that level of extremism holds as much political power as Hamas holds in Palestine. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so the point being is what these students really do not realize is the level of privilege they have to be in America, where no matter how much they hate the other side of the majority political parties, none of them are genuinely as extreme and as pro-terrorism as Hamas is in Palestine. And I think that's lost among a lot of my generation. I don't know how old you are, CJ, but I think that's lost among a lot of my generation and this is just one example of how the privilege to be an American and to live in America is so taken for granted by many young people.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Anything else you'd like to add, CJ? I think that you definitely brought a very fascinating perspective.
I would just encourage people as far as just kind of understanding the conflict and everything out there. There are multiple sources that they could go to, especially the history of this, because so many people look at the now versus how did we even get here originally.
Mm-hmm.
Dennis Prager, he has a wonderful video explaining it. Ben Shapiro, all those sources. There's also, I can't think of the gentleman. He is an ex-CIA agent. He has a website called Everyday Spy. I bet you might know him. He did a short video explaining the now motivations of how Hamas, Iran are connected together right now, and especially with the peace talks going on between Israel and Saudi Arabia.
Yeah.
And how this might be non-coincidence,
And Andrew Bustamante, is that him? Andrew Bustamante?
That might be him.
Yep.
Might be him. I'm not sure exactly.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much, CJ, for your insight and for your perspective. I really do appreciate it. And thank you so much for listening and calling in.
Yep, certainly. Enjoy
Awesome.
your show.
Thank you, man. Guys, that was an amazing call. I always appreciate interesting perspectives and just making sure that we're thinking about every facet of what is going on in this conflict and understanding who the players are and why. That's really, really my biggest thing is understanding and trying to find rationale, even in the irrational, as to why there would be young people, anybody, but young people supporting genuine terrorists. And also trying to find ways to show them what are they actually supporting and ask them, do you know what you're actually supporting? And so going on from this, I want to talk about the people that were supporting this from Harvard. So there was 31 different student organizations at Harvard that signed on to this support letter that blames Israel for all the violence, not only Israel's violence, but also blames Israel for the Hamas terrorist attacks. And so one of these, so there was a lot of them, and many of them, there was like Islamic organizations, pro-Palestine organizations, Amnesty International, which was an interesting one. But one really stuck out to me in the list of the 31, and it was the Harvard Jews for Liberation. The Harvard Jews for Liberation. And this one stood out to me because it's interesting to me that the Jewish nation of Israel is not supported by a Jewish organization at Harvard. It sounds like, we many people have seen that viral meme of Queers for Palestine, where it's LGBTQ community members holding up this sign that says Queers for Palestine, and under it has there's another meme of chickens for KFC. Because if you know anything about the Islamic religion and those Middle Eastern countries, what they do to people that are of the LGBTQ community is throw them off buildings. So it would seem odd that a Jewish organization, Jews for Liberation from Harvard, would support Palestine over Israel. Well, why? That's what I'm always searching for, is the why. Why would you do this? Why would you support somebody who literally wants to eradicate you? Well, from their own, I wanted to look up what this organization was first. So Jews for Liberation offers, this is what they claimed on Harvard's website of their organizations. It offers warm, creative, spiritual, and political space for anti-Zionist and non-Zionist Jews, as well as Jews questioning their relationship with Zionism. Okay, what is Zionism? Because it's a word not everybody is necessarily familiar with. It was definitely popularized back when Israel became an actual nation back in the 1940s, I believe, late 1940s, early 1950s. And Zionism, as defined, is a movement for the development and protection of a Jewish nation in Israel. So why would Jewish people? So then this brings me to another why. I keep asking myself why. Make it make sense, right? That's what we're looking for in all of this. Make it make sense. Because it doesn't make sense that you have all these lefties who preach, who preach, they get mad about the littlest microaggression. You say the littlest microaggression, and they're like, you need to be jailed. But in the same breath, you have a macroaggression going on in Israel from the Hamas terrorists, and they support the terrorists. The same lefties that claim that Republicans victim blame all the time, apparently, are genuinely blaming the victim of these terrorist attacks. So why would this Jewish student organization be against a Jewish nation in Israel? Well, it was really hard to find a concrete answer. It was. But the best thing I could find is that there was a Jewish virtual library online. Jews who criticize or oppose Zionism, this is according to the Jewish virtual library, Jews that criticize or oppose Zionism, the state of Israel, are usually Orthodox and maintain that Israel can only be regained miraculously. They view the present state as a blasphemous human attempt to usurp God's role, and many actively work to dismantle the secular state of Israel. However, unlike many Gentile anti-Zionists, Jewish anti-Zionists usually firmly believe in Jewish right to the land of Israel, but only at the future time of redemption. So basically, here's what it is. This is what the Jewish Virtual Library says, is the reason why a Jewish person would not support the state of Israel is because there was human intervention in creating the state of Israel, and that it was not necessarily perfect, in their opinion, perfectly in line with God's will. But what this also recognizes subtly is that there's Gentile, meaning non-Jewish anti-Zionists, and those people are genuine anti-Semites. So that's what really happened here. What happened is you had, and this is assuming the belief of this Jewish organization from Harvard that is supporting Palestine and the Hamas attacks. The assumption I have is that because they know their faith and they're Jewish, hopefully, because they know that. I know I'm getting a caller right now too. I'm going to put you on hold and bring you on in the next segment because I have to finish up with this a little bit. Because this Jewish organization was supporting, I would hope that they would genuinely know their religion and that they were supporting it for a religious reason. But they took an enemy of my enemy is my friend stance, which is something I talk about a lot on here because I hate it. I hate the idea that the enemy of my enemy is my friend. It's flawed. Because if you support Palestine because you don't support Israel, you don't really support Palestine. You just don't necessarily support the idea of a Jewish state, or at least a human intervened Jewish state. I would hope that you wouldn't support the eradication of your own people, because that is what Hamas wants. That is what these terrorist attacks were a battle in a larger war for. And so this is insane. But there are also, here's the thing. And so I wanted to hyper localize that one group because I found it fascinating that a Jewish organization, but there were still 30 other organizations alongside them that signed on to support Palestine and blame Israel for the attacks. But now several CEOs are urging Harvard University to release the names. They want the receipts, everybody. They want the receipts. They want Harvard to release the names of the people in the student organizations who signed the pro-Palestinian letter that criticized Israel. Seriously, this is out of Axios, everybody. Billionaire Bill Ackman, a hedge fund manager and Harvard alum, said in an online post Tuesday that he had been asked by, quote, a number of CEOs if Harvard would disclose the list of students in the groups that issued a letter that said it held the Israeli regime entirely responsible for all unfolding violence. So they want the names, they want the receipts. And we're going to break down in the next segment, in the next hour, a little from some of the next hour, why this is so important and why these students are now backtracking. Yeah, they are. And what that really says about them. We're going to cover all of that, guys, but I do have to take a quick break here on the radio. Thank you so much again to my caller, CJ, who called in. I also want to thank my Uber driver from the other day, Todd. I know this is super out of left field, but Todd gave me a ride and he recognized my voice simply from me getting in the car and saying Uber for Kevin. He's like, oh, You must be Kevin from Cities 92.9. I was like, yeah. And he was like, I listened to your show. And I'm like, thank you so much, Todd. You're a great guy. God bless you guys. God bless America. We'll be right back with more Speechless on Cities 92.9, the news and talk of Bloomington Normal and beyond. Okay, I got to check who this caller is. Screen him real quick. Hello, who is this? Andrea, how's it going? It may be in the next hour. My next segment is really short, and I want to make sure I can wrap up with some of this stuff. And so maybe in the next hour. Give me a call back. Probably third segment of the next hour would be the best option. Okay, sounds good. Thank you. Bye-bye. Great caller on the line there. That's Andrea. I did tell her not right now. I do want some callers, and I want to have these conversations. But my next segment is really short before the end of the hour. And I want to make sure that I get to. There's one you guys know, I'm going to take a short break from the Harvard stuff because my fourth segment of my first hour, I usually talk about something motivational. And I got stuff coming up that I want to talk about. And I want to direct more time to what these CEOs are calling for, what it says about the Harvard students, everything like that. And so the next segment's going to take a little detour, but we'll relate a little bit. Let's see what you guys are saying in the comments too before we get into this next segment. You think I'm a hobbit? Look, I'm not tall by any means, but I'm still 5'8", so like I wouldn't be necessarily a hobbit. But thanks. I have never seen The Lord of the Rings. That might really make you mad, but I've never seen The Lord of the Rings. It's never been my kind of genre. But I guess I'll have to check it out. I do hear that there's a lot of great stories and like the themes within the story are very worth listening and watching too. It's just like there's a lot of content there. And I don't necessarily have time to watch all of it and give it the time that it probably deserves. Okay, buddy. You can say it in the chat. That's fine, but not if you call in. CJ did have a great call. Your cat keeps trying to help you type today. We'll let him say something. He probably has a good opinion. I don't want to say there will be definitively, but with an open southern border and many nations, including Iran, and also just terrorist groups like Hamas who actively hate America, sadly, it's not out of the realm of possibility. No culture. Sorry. I'm sorry. It was just something I never got into. I'll have to try it at some point. I will. Just for you, DG. Yeah, Connor, you are tall. I don't know how many green beans you ate as a kid, but I must have not eaten enough. I must have drank all your milk. Yep. And if you guys, I know I mentioned my shirt earlier too. If you guys like it, and you want one for yourself or a shirt like it, you guys can always go. I've talked about this before. I do have a partnership with UnitedMerch.com, and you can check out this shirt. They got a lot of other fun shirts. Like I have one that says Anti-Socialism Social Club. Might have seen me wear that one before. A lot of fun merch. So go check out UnitedMerch.com. You can use my code Speechless at checkout for 20% off. At some point, I should probably start putting that link in the description. I have a link that gets you directly to their website that with the discount already applied. But you can check it out if you want. That's a way to support the show, to get some fun merch out of it, if you'd like. Okay, we're about to come back for my last segment. Again, a little bit of a detour here, but don't worry. We're going to bring it back in the next hour. Nothing's going to break my stride here on Speechless. I'm your host, Kev Phares, 22-year-old conservative college student out of Central Illinois, host of Speechless, obviously, on Cities 92.9. But I'm also on Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, Twitter, and Rumble, everybody. So you can go look up on all those platforms. Just look up Speechless with Kev. It should be like the first thing that comes up, Speechless with Kev, and you can watch me in studio. Don't be driving and watching me, but you could be watching me in studio. You can interact in the comments section, and we can have a great time doing that. So thank you guys so much. Don't forget to like, subscribe, share, and comment if you are on that platform. In the most of this show, I've been talking a lot about a lot of people that surprisingly have come out in support of the terrorists and blamed Israel for the attacks that happened on it. In the next hour of the show, I'm going to talk a lot more about that, why the younger generation is doing this. Do they genuinely believe? Do they genuinely know what they're supporting? And that's not going to diminish the blame on them for basically sympathizing with terrorists. But I do take a quick detour. A lot of times in the fourth segment of my first hour, I talk a little bit about motivation, and I've learned a lot, or at least I feel like I've gotten some wisdom on motivation and stuff. I know I'm young, and so my wisdom is only 22-year-old wisdom, and so take it with a grain of salt. But as I've been reading my Bible more and getting more, I've lost a lot of weight in the last few months through a lot of hard work, diet change, and I've talked about that a lot. But I have other things that I've been working on in my life too. I live a busy life, guys. I'm taking my LSAT tomorrow for law school, my law school admissions test. It's been really weighing heavy on me, and it causes a lot of anxiety on my life. We have a frequent texter, and they probably aren't listening right now, but a frequent hater of a texter that consistently tells me that I'm never going to be a lawyer, that I'm too stupid, I'm too much of a moron, whatever. Thank you for listening to that texter when you do listen. Thank you so much. You can always text in at 309-451-9299. But that person really motivates me a lot. And that's not the whole point of what I'm getting at. But I want to let that person know they really motivate me, because if it were not for you, I probably wouldn't spend nearly as much time studying, because I just want to prove you wrong at this point. That's kind of the kind of person I am. But I have a lot of anxiety in my life. A lot of people, 50% of my generation has some level of diagnosed depression, anxiety. I'm not diagnosed with anything. I don't want to have pills shoved down my throat or anything. But I know I have anxiety. I have this job. I'm a student. I do a lot of work in politics. I have my LSAT coming up. I have a lot going on in my life. I'm a young kid with a lot ahead of me. So I have a lot of anxiety in my life. And how do I deal with that? It's not easy. I fail. I let the anxiety get to me sometimes, period. But I'm sure that a lot of people out there have anxiety. You could have anxiety about a lot bigger things than just what I'm going through. You could have family members in Israel. You could have people that you have not been in contact with because they're going through those terrorist attacks. You could have other anxieties that are weighing on you, whether that's a sickness in the family or sickness of yourself, a loss in the family, anything like that. I understand a lot of that. I sympathize, if not empathize with it. And so one thing that really helps me, and I've talked about Philippians in the past, Philippians in the Bible. I don't always like to bring biblical stuff into my motivation, because I know that not everybody is religious, but I do find even if you are not yourself a Christian, there are things in the Bible that can really help you. And so this is what I want to talk about. I always talk about Philippians because this is a time Paul, the Apostle Paul, was writing a letter to the Philippians as he sits in jail, awaiting a death sentence for standing behind Jesus. And so one thing that directly relates to the anxiety and everything that I was talking about is Philippians 4:6-7. Philippians 4:6-7 states, "Do not be anxious about anything, but in every situation, a prayer and petition with thanksgiving, present your requests to God. And the peace of God, which transcends all understanding, will guard your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus." Now, there's two ways to look at this. I'm going to tell you the Christian way to look at it, and I'm going to tell you the secular way to look at it. I don't love supporting secularism, but if you're not a Christian, if you're Jewish or agnostic and you're not 100% sure, I'm going to break it down for you real quick here. If you're a Christian, don't try your best not to let anxiety get to you. Because when anxiety gets to you, that's the devil getting to you. You're going to fail. We all do. We're all sinners. I get that. But do your best not to let the anxieties get to you. God will always be with you, and prayer and thanks to him for always being with you will bring you peace. I feel it. When I pray during a time of anxiousness, I can feel a wave of relief come across my body. It is physical. And for those that might not be Christian, find what you believe in. Maybe seek out Christianity. Maybe if you're Jewish, pray to that God. It will relieve your anxiety. God will be with you, no matter who you are, and he can help you deal with that anxiety. You don't need to pop a Xanax. You don't need to be a fool for big pharma. You can do this on your own, and it's not on your own. You're with God. Thank you guys so much. We'll be back with another hour of Speechless. I hope you got something out of that. But we got more to cover when it comes to Israel, Palestine, and all that stuff. God bless you. God bless America. And until the next hour, stay tuned. We got more Speechless coming up. Let's see what we got here. I hope you guys got that. Those segments are very helpful to me, to remind myself. And so I hope that other people get something out of them too when I discuss a little bit of motivation, dealing with things in your life, because a lot of young people have they don't know where to look. And for a long time, I've been like that too. And it's finding the right places to see. No, I get this. Actually, I think I'm happy you bring this up. Um, and I know some medications are necessary, but I also find that, especially in our generation, Connor, you grew up in like the same area as I did. Anybody diagnosed with ADHD was, okay, here's your medication. Here's your medication. Here's your medication. And there are some people that genuinely need it. I get that. But I feel medication has been so much pushed on our generation. People have become too reliant on it, when it comes to especially medications for mental illnesses that don't necessarily need medication for treatment. Only the most extreme cases should. We have people that are hooked on Xanax, and others, simply because they couldn't find, or because that's what their doctor said they needed. This is the other thing too. Exactly. I think that a lot of it though, and a lot of pushing those medications is because of big pharma's want to have people consistently paying out to them. And so people feel as if they need it, but you do not. Oh, not everybody. Some people do, but not everybody needs. Not everybody needs medication, and it's made clear that we have a sector of society that believes that everybody should be medicated for something. Thank you, Guillotine. I appreciate it. We'll be back soon here. I am going to, my water here is almost out. And for the next hour, I want to make sure I have water because my throat gets dry and everything. And so I will be back in less than 2 minutes, everybody. Stick with me. I'll be right back. Okie dokie, everybody. I'm back. Don't worry. Just had to grab my water, my new one, my cold one. It's nice. Let's see what we got. I see some more comments coming in here. What do I think about the allegations that Israel is engaging in collective punishment towards Palestinian civilians? I don't know of those allegations. Like I said earlier, I don't believe Israel's a saint in this conflict. I'm also, based on a story that I will cover a little bit later, I'm inclined to believe or to not believe that. Based on just this being my first time hearing of it. I am inclined not to believe it. But if show me the evidence. That's always what I'm curious to see. Show me the evidence. So this could be, and this is kind of what Oklahoma Chicken Cam says right here, is some form of collective punishment. Is that I don't see, I don't know if that would be organized specifically to hurt civilians, or if it really would be to hurt the military operations. And unfortunately, civilians get caught in that crossfire. The problem with the Hamas thing is Hamas directly targeted civilians. Like, that was a civilian attack. That was not an act of war. I mean, it was, but it was an act of terror more than it was an act of war. And so, so this could be for the purpose of blocking the military, and civilians get caught in it. So, but I got to come back here on the radio. And we are back with Speechless on Cities 92.9, the news and talk of Bloomington Normal. I'm your host, Kev Phares, 22-year-old conservative college student out of Central Illinois, host of, obviously, Speechless here on Cities 92.9. But I also host a lot of other content outside of just the radio, because I only have 2 hours on Sundays. And there's other news that goes on throughout the week. And so I want to make sure that we can cover all of it. And so if you want to be able to make sure you don't miss a minute of that, definitely go check out my YouTube channel. You look up Speechless Kev, you'll find that there. But you could also look me up. I'm also right now streaming live on Facebook, YouTube, like I said, Twitch, Twitter, and Rumble. Again, all you got to do is look up Speechless Kev, and it should be the first thing. Speechless with Kev should be the first thing that pops up, and you can see me live in studio, and we can like interact and everything. I can see your comments. I can bring them on screen, all that kind of fun stuff. But I do love you guys listening on the radio too. I get it. Some of you guys are in your car, and totally understandable. And I appreciate you tuning in as well, especially if you're my Uber driver, Todd, that I had the other day, because he said he was a frequent listener, and I really appreciate you, Todd. But we've been talking in the last several segments about a lot about this Israel, Hamas, Palestine conflict, primarily as it relates to primarily young Americans. There are some older Americans that are in support of these terrorists and blaming Israel for whatever reason. But primarily a lot of young Americans, my age Americans, I'm 22, a lot of my age Americans, my generation, blaming Israel entirely and saying that Hamas has every right to rape, torture, mass murder, chop off the heads of babies, burn babies alive, burn people alive in Israel as active terror. Young people are in America, again, are genuinely saying this. A group of 31 Harvard student organizations signed on to a letter that expressed just that, supporting the terrorists and blaming Israel. Now, a lot of CEOs are urging Harvard University to release the names of the people in the student organizations who signed a pro-Palestinian letter that criticized Israel. The person that's driving this entire thing is a guy by the name of, let me find it here real quick. I just had it up. Bill Ackman. Bill Ackman on Twitter came out and said, I have been asked by a number of CEOs if Harvard would release a list of the members of each of the Harvard organizations that have issued the letter assigning sole responsibility for Hamas's heinous attacks to Israel, so as to ensure that none of us inadvertently hire any of their members. If, in fact, their members support the letter, they have released the names of the signatories should be made public so their views are publicly known. One should not be able to hide behind a corporate shield when issuing statements supporting the actions of terrorists who, we now learn, have beheaded babies, among other inconceivably despicable acts. 100%. That's Bill Ackman. Bill Ackman, who is the Sweet Green, or he is a CEO. He's a CEO of a hedge fund. You also have Sweet Green CEO Jonathan Newman, who replied to the post saying, "I would like to know so I never hire these people." Jake Wurzak, CEO of Dove Hill Capital Management, also replied to the post saying, "I second this." Michael Brockheim of FabFit Funds CEO, he said, "We are in this as well." So here's the thing. At least since these CEOs have come out and said, we want the receipts. We want to know which students said this. We don't want to hire them. We want to blacklist them. We don't want them involved in our companies if they are going to openly support terrorism. And here's the biggest thing. They're also not saying that these student groups have to support Israel. No, you can remain neutral on it. You could even, in some ways, these CEOs aren't even saying you have to be, you can't be pro-Palestine. But the problem is this letter specifically said that Israel is to blame and that Hamas is in the right. And Israel is to blame for all of it. Yeah. And so these CEOs are taking a great stance. Since they came out and said this, these CEOs, at least 5 of the 30, now actually it might be more, 34 student groups that have co-signed Saturday's letter have since retracted their support for the letter per the Harvard Crimson student newspaper. This is out of Axios that I'm getting this. Among them is the Harvard Undergraduate Nepali Student Association, which said in an online post Tuesday, it regretted that its decision had been interpreted as a tacit support for the recent violent attacks in Israel. Really? You regret that it's been interpreted that way? That it's been interpreted as a support for the violent attacks in Israel? So they're not even coming out, this student group specifically, isn't even coming out and apologizing for blaming Israel. They're blaming everybody else. Look, this is what I always say. A lot of lefty ideology is lacking accountability. I don't want accountability for my actions. That's exactly what this retraction says here, is we regret you all perceived it that way. We regret that all you guys perceived it as we support the terrorist attacks. When in the letter, there is very little any other way to read that. They don't want accountability for their actions. Harvard's president, Claudine Gay, said Tuesday that she condemns the terrorist atrocities perpetrated by Hamas, and while our students have a right to speak for themselves, no student group speaks for the college or its leadership. Even what I guarantee is a woke Harvard college president, I guarantee you she's woke. I guarantee it. Comes out and says, these student groups don't speak for us. We don't like terrorism. So now what are the students who signed on doing? Like the specific students too, not just some of the groups. So many of them are backing out, according to the New York Post, a flurry of Harvard University students and groups, like I said, some of them desperately trying to backtrack on their support of the letter blaming Israel for the mass slaughter. 4, now it said 5 in the Axios article, so it must be a little more up to date. But really what I want to talk about with this New York Post article is 17 other Harvard groups joined 500 faculty and staff and 3,000 others in signing a counter statement attacking the other group's letter as completely wrong and deeply offensive. Others in some of the group's initial letter, which held the Israeli regime entirely responsible, quit while distancing themselves from the involvement. Danielle Michelane tweeted Monday that she was a board member of a Harvard group that signed the statement on Israel, and she thinks it was egregious and has resigned from her role. She said, "I'm sorry for the pain this has caused. My organization did not have a formal process, and I didn't even see the statement until we had signed on." Didn't even read it. This is a person that is going to Harvard Law School, everybody. This is a Harvard Law student. Didn't even read the statement before voting to sign on to it. Didn't even read it. I wouldn't want her as my lawyer. Would you want somebody who wouldn't even read the case file before getting in the courtroom? No, I wouldn't want her as my lawyer. Honestly, she's made herself look even worse from this. She also added that she prevented another student group trying to win back some props from people. She added she tried to prevent another student group she remains on the board on from signing it once she actually read it. The statement is not representative of my values, and my heart is with those impacted. Okay, so here's the breakdown of all this. First thing, bringing it personal a little bit. When I was in high school, I worked as a lifeguard at a local pool. And I had a coworker who asked me, this conversation comes up in my head a lot for a lot of different reasons, but specifically this one a lot. He asked me, he goes, Kev, if you got accepted and got a full ride to Harvard, would you go? Like if just, even with all my qualifications, exactly the person I am, would I go? And I said no. And he was dumbfounded. The guy I was talking to, he's dumbfounded. Dave was his name. Dave was like, why? You literally would get accepted and get a full ride to one of the most, what is considered to be the most prestigious school in the United States. Why wouldn't you go? And I said, because I don't feel like I'd fit in there. Well, I'd never visited the school. I still have never visited the school. I had some ideas of the campus and the community based on media perception and people that I'd known that had gone there. And here's what I had to say is I wasn't raised believing I was better than anybody. I wasn't raised being ungrateful for my circumstances. And I wasn't raised to believe I'm entitled to anything more than I'd earned. And I'll be honest, even some things that I earned, I wonder as to whether or not I really deserve them. So I wouldn't want to be at Harvard, no matter the status symbol it represents or the opportunities it could provide, because Harvard is not me. Now, I don't believe everyone at Harvard is pretentious, arrogant, and entitled, but many are. And this story proves that. Because students are supporting terrorism, and it shows that they are pretentious, arrogant, and entitled. How? How do I know this? Because they believe they are invincible. These students believe that they could do anything, that they're untouchable, that they could literally support terrorist attacks and blame the victim and not lose their Harvard privilege. That privilege being the high rate of employment as prestigious jobs for graduates. Look, and how does this, everything that I'm saying, the perception of Harvard students, how does this tie in directly to the terrorist attacks? I'd like to point out that this is performative woke activism. What they are doing, the supporting of the terrorist attacks, it's performative woke activism. They feel they're untouchable. I don't actually believe, this is true, I don't actually believe that a lot of these students actually would support the attacks if they knew what had happened, if they had actually done their due diligence. I think there are two kinds of people that signed on to this. Maybe a bonus one too, and I'll get to the bonus one, but two main kinds of people that signed on to this. The first are those that are relatively indifferent and ignorant, like that one girl that I mentioned that hadn't even read the statement before voting on to sign to it. I think she was probably just told that it was the woke thing to do, and so she did it. The second are those that hate Israel, not the ones that actually support Hamas and the actions Hamas took. To them, it's not about supporting Hamas's action as much as it's about supporting the destruction of Judeo-Christian values and hating America. How do I know this? Okay, because a lot of their rhetoric, a lot of the pro-Palestine rhetoric is, it's not terrorism, it's anti-colonialism. And America is a colonial nation. Colonization, that's another word that I meant. Colonization. Colonization, that's the word they always like to use, which is fighting back against racism and it's social justice to be anti-colonization. Now, to them, it's, like I said, it's not about supporting Hamas. It's about hating America, because Hamas and Palestine are supported verbally and financially by Iran, which would love nothing more than to see the destruction of America. Those woke college kids have been indoctrinated to believe that America is bad, colonization is bad, and that the Jewish and Christian faiths are oppressive. So, in an interesting twist, they'll decide to support a religion that throws gays off buildings and doesn't want women to be able to leave the house without a man. That's what these people will do. But their wokeness is cheap. All of this, again, programmed to hate America, hate colonization. That's what they're really trying to support here. And this is not to diminish the act of supporting terrorism, because they are still doing that. I don't think that was necessarily their direct purpose. I don't think, I like to try to believe that most people would not want to support the acts of raping people, burning people alive, and all of that. I think that most of them are actually, despite being Harvard students, are just too stupid to actually see what's going on and have been indoctrinated by the woke lefties that are just blaming colonization and saying that we need to support the anti-colonization efforts and everything like that. But again, their wokeness is cheap. And this is why I say it's performative activism. How do I know it's cheap? Because as soon as their Harvard privilege is put on the line, as soon as their invincible mentality that I mentioned earlier is put on the line, they retract. They'll be woke up to the point that it sacrifices their cushy, well-paying corporate jobs. These are the people that have no core values other than worldly desires. Look, I'm a controversial figure. I'll be honest. I'm well aware. I'm controversial. But I wouldn't sacrifice my values to work for some corporate machine that doesn't represent me. I know that coming out, utilizing my free speech, which I have and I'm grateful for, to say biological truths that people get very up in arms about, like my belief that a man is a man and a woman is a woman and you can't change that, just one of them, or my belief that we should shut down our border, that we shouldn't be teaching kids that to hate America and that critical race theory is bad, all of these things for which I'm heavily criticized for. I know that they could be sacrificing a very cushy job in the corporate world. But I'm perfectly fine with that because I don't want to work for somebody that doesn't support my values. But these lefties in the colleges that want to support everything woke, that are allies and support Palestine against the colonization efforts of Israel, which is just blatantly false, by the way, which I've already covered, but it's blatantly false. They're performative. And it's solely for the purpose of showing, look how woke I am. Look how woke I am. Look how not racist I am. Look how that's what they're trying to push. Look how pro-gay I am. But as soon as their corporate jobs come on the line, that's when they make the switch. It's performative. They don't actually believe any of it. They don't actually care about what they're supporting, what they're saying. All they care about is themselves. All they care about is themselves. Me, myself, and I. That's what these entitled, arrogant, and pretentious Harvard students actually care about. But I got to take a break here, and we're going to cover a little bit more about this. We got France actually canceled pro-Palestine protests. We're going to cover that and some other things. Everybody, also don't forget you can text or call in at 309-451-9299 if you want to be involved in the conversation. God bless you. God bless America. We'll be right back with more Speechless on Cities 92.9, the news and talk of Bloomington Normal and beyond. Okay. I know that might have been spicy. Let's see what you guys have been saying. Definitely negligence. Possibly intentional. I don't know. I don't know how much, because negligence can be intentional. But I was more, negligence is part of it. I would say ignorance would be a little bit of it too. Yep. It's never going to happen. And I don't know how much I support. It depends on the policy when it comes to money out of politics. Because how are you going to, here's the thing is, okay, so you say Nancy Pelosi can't trade stocks. A member of Congress can't trade stocks. Well, then are you going to say that their husband or wife can't trade stocks? What about their kids? What about their cousins? Their parents? Because you could have Paul Pelosi trading stocks in his name with knowledge from Nancy, and they still gain the same amount. I don't think that there is a way to genuinely take money out of politics without infringing on the rights of civilians. That's where I get conflicted on this stuff. I don't think there's a way, because I'm not against the idea, because there's obviously a conflict of interest there, but I just don't think it's possible without infringing on the rights of civilians. Yeah, go back to the tanky issue. I just don't know what tanky means. I'll Google it real quick. Maybe I can. Tanky. pejorative label generally applied to communists who express support of one-party communist regimes that are associated with Marxist and Leninism, whether contemporary or historical. Okay. See, my pejorative for communist is just communist. So a little bit different. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Speechless on Cities 92.9, the news and talk of Bloomington Normal and beyond. I'm your host, Kev Phares, 22-year-old conservative college student at Illinois State University, double majoring in marketing and political science, just in case you guys didn't know. Planning on going to law school next year. I got my LSAT tomorrow. Very nervous, but prayers would be helpful. I'd really appreciate it. But we're back here, and everybody, if you want to be involved in the show and get involved in the conversation, don't forget, you can always text or call in at 309-451-9299. I'd love to hear what you have to say and what you're thinking. 309-451-9299 is that number. And you can also go check us out on Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, Twitter, or Rumble. All you got to do is look up Speechless with Kev, and I'm right there. And I'm interacting with a lot of our people, a lot of my viewers throughout the show, pulling up their comments, everything. If you got a question, you can text, call, or you can put it in the comment section. But I got a few more stories. We've been talking a lot about Israel Palestine, the American reaction, the propaganda that's being put out by far lefties that is in support of terrorists, why they're really doing it, and also how some of it is cheap. At Harvard student student organizations that came out blaming Israel for the terrorist attacks and all the violence that is happening over there when Hamas is the one that's committing these violent acts. It's disgusting. But I also believe it's performative because as soon as CEOs started asking for receipts and saying, hey, who are the students that actually signed on to this? Because we don't want to hire them. Student organizations started apologizing and saying, no, that's not what we meant. That's not what we meant. We didn't want that, because they don't actually care. They're just going with the way the wind blows in the woke agenda, what they've been programmed to push through a lot of woke education, as well as societal expectation from Generation Z. And so they do that, but then as soon as their cushy jobs are threatened, then they're like, wait, never mind. We don't actually believe that. We're just kidding. Yeah, but you still supported a terrorist. Whether or not you were kidding or actually knew what you were supporting, I think it actually says more about you if you supported terrorism without doing your due diligence than it does if you actually knew what you were supporting. But people ask, they're like, well, why should we? So we know why we shouldn't support Hamas. And again, I'm not for getting into and sending more troops to die for an endless Middle Eastern war from America. I'm not for sending more money to foreign nations when our border isn't secure, when inflation is through the roof, when we have significant overspending here in America, as well as we've already overspent in Ukraine, which I've been consistently against as well. So I'm not necessarily for spending more than we are already legally obligated to, because we do have a there is laws out there that provide a legal obligation to support Israel in some way. But other than our already legal obligation, I'm not for sending more to Israel. But I do believe that we should verbally support Israel and be there in the event that Hamas starts to win. Why? Well, and why is Israel better than Hamas and Palestine? Here's why. Out of the Daily Wire today, I believe, the Israel Defense Forces have repeatedly urged civilians inside northern Gaza to evacuate immediately as it prepares to start a ground offensive in response to more than 1,300 Israelis who are murdered by Palestinian terrorists with Hamas. The IDF commonly warns civilians to exit buildings and neighborhoods where it is getting ready to conduct airstrikes, but now it is calling for a much larger evacuation. A quote from an IDF spokesperson says they are calling for the people of Gaza to evacuate to southern Gaza for their safety. We have a responsibility to protect our people and make sure this thing never happens again. So the difference between Israeli Defense Forces and Hamas, what's the difference? Why is Hamas better? They urge warnings. They say we don't want to hurt civilians, but we need to show that we are not going to let this terrorism win. We will fight back. And we don't want civilian casualties. So get out now. Get out now. That's what they're saying. What did Hamas do? They lived in tunnels under Israel, and they snuck in through their borders, kidnapped people with no warning, raped, murdered, mass murdered, burned alive, chopped heads off of babies. So who should you support? The ones that say, hey, we don't want civilian casualties, but we kind of have to defend ourselves? Or the ones that say, we're freedom fighters, and then literally commit acts of terrorism? Like, not just acts of war, acts of terrorism. I'm sorry, I'm going to support Israel a lot more. But I will always support free speech, and that's why in the next segment I'm going to talk a little bit about France. And they actually banned pro-Palestine protests. And I know it might not be popular, but I'm actually against the banning of that. I'm against the banning of pro-Palestine protests, with an exception. And we're going to cover that here in the next segment, everybody. God bless you. God bless America. But I got to take a break here on Speechless. Go check us out on Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, Twitter, and Rumble, which many of you are already, and I thank you for that. Don't forget to like, subscribe, share, and comment, all that fun stuff. And be involved in the conversation. You can also be involved in the conversation by calling in at 309-451-9299, 309-451-9299. I want to hear what you have to say. If you disagree with me, you're the first one I'll be taking your call from. Just remember, no cursing. And keep it respectful. God bless you. God bless America. We'll be right back with more Speechless on Cities 92.9, the news and talk of Bloomington Normal and beyond. Obviously, still live here on here. How Canadian of Harvard students. That's funny. I don't know if you guys saw this. Okay. I thought this was funny. I'm going to tell the story. So I posted a video yesterday on my YouTube. It was me and Kat Peterson, another host here at Cities. Maybe it was, I think it was yesterday, of a Canadian, a CBC, which is essentially Canadian propaganda video that is required teaching for fourth graders in Wisconsin, in which it pushes gender theory and gender ideology, which whether or not you want to have that conversation, I understand, but that conversation should not be happening at the fourth grade level. I do not believe that conversation should be happening at the fourth grade level. It only leaves kids with more questions than answers. And so I used this video to talk about it from the CBC Kids, actually. It got a copyright strike and says that it cannot be viewed in Canada. So the Canadian-made propaganda cannot be viewed in Canada. Seriously. I might do a short video on that at some point. I just think it's hilarious. Actually couldn't do it. They can't see it. I think this is really funny. I'm not going to say it. You guys can just read it. But I think this is really funny. Interesting. I didn't even know that there were leftists that were apologists for North Korea. I knew that there were apologists for Cuba, and even in some cases for the USSR. But I didn't know there were leftist apologists for North Korea. And this is why I believe in horseshoe theory so much, that when you get to what is considered the far right, this is right to me. When you get to the far right and on the spectrum, and you get to, like, you talk about like philosophers, like all the ones that make up the ideas of fascism, Gobineau, Lenin, Stalin, all of that, a lot of fascism. I'm sorry, not Stalin. He's not kind of fascist, but Lenin especially. And you get to those, it's so reminiscent and similar to that of far left, like Marxism. And that's why I believe in horseshoe theory significantly. Common debate in political science classes, kind of a useless debate, unless you're just like a nerd about political philosophy, like I am, but an ideology. But that's what I think is what's considered the far right is actually very, very similar, just only slight differences as with the far left. They're very, very similar, though. I do appreciate you, Connor. I know we disagree on majority of policy issues. We definitely don't vote for the same candidates. And I don't agree with all your editorials. I've read some. But I do appreciate that you're like willing to call out your own side, because you've seen, I get hate from people that are conservatives and Republicans for me doing the same. I just am trying to be realistic. I can't believe that the UN had the audacity to warn Israel to take it easy on Hamas. Could you imagine if they had said that to us after 9/11? Yeah. Whenever I read this comment and all I think about is courtesy of the red, white, and blue. Yeah. Courtesy of the red, white, and blue. Everybody, Toby Keith, go take a listen. Relevant as much today as it was to just post 9/11 America, in my opinion. Hey, I just had a copyright dispute that just got approved, meaning that um, I violated copyright in one of my commentary videos or reaction videos, and I won. They said it was allowed, so that video will no longer be restricted at all. And we're coming back. Hey, and welcome back to Speechless on Cities 92.9, the news and talk of Bloomington Normal. I am your host, Kev Phares, 22-year-old conservative college student out of Central Illinois, obviously hosting Speechless from 3 to 5 on Sundays, which I do all the time. I love being in here live with you guys, and you can always text or call and be involved by texting or calling at 309-451-9299. I want to hear what you guys have to say. Please, please, please call in. Let's have a conversation. Even if you disagree with me, I'd love that. Just keep it clean and keep it respectful. That's all I ask. 309-451-9299. You could also be involved in the show by going onto YouTube or Facebook or Twitch or Twitter or Rumble, but I heavily suggest YouTube because I put on YouTube exclusively. I put on off-air content that does not ever get radio airplay, but a lot of people do see it on YouTube and they seem to like it. So go like, subscribe, share, comment, and everything like that on YouTube, Facebook, Twitch, Twitter, Rumble. All you got to do is look up Speechless with Kev. Should be the first thing that comes up. Speechless with Kev. You'll find your way there. And you can interact with me and I can interact with you and we'll have a good time. But I've been talking today about a lot of different things as it relates to the American response, especially youth American response to the ongoing Israel-Palestinian conflict, why Israel is much more in the right. Again, not a saint, but much more in the right than Hamas and Palestine. But you have genuine college students, what are considered to be the best of the best in America, Harvard students that signed on to support Hamas and say that Israel is to blame for all the violence that has happened in the last few weeks. It's insane. It is pure evil. But in reality, it's just arrogance, pretentiousness, and entitlement from these students. That's really what it is. And the thing is that I think is heavily lost, and I talked about this a little bit with a caller, I believe in the last hour, CJ, is that there's an entitlement among my generation where many are so focused with this idea of white privilege or male privilege and all of that, but they don't want to recognize the true privilege that all of us hold, most of us that are listening, watching, everything like that, is the privilege to be an American. And being an American is a very, very unique privilege. Look, you have people in Ukraine that have been fearing an attack from Russia for a very long time, most of their lives for some of them. And now many of them are going through it. And I know there's different perspectives on it, but it's true. You have other nations that have war on their homeland. Look, even in the 1940s, when Japan attacked Pearl Harbor, their general said that he was afraid to attack the continental United States and instead decided to attack Pearl Harbor because he knew in the continental United States, there would be a blade of grass there would be a gun behind every blade of grass. I almost misquoted. There would be a gun behind every blade of grass. Look, I know that there's Second Amendment right debates and everything, and less, some less people are owning guns. It depends on the area you live in, everything like that. But you have a unique privilege to be an American. You have the privilege to own a firearm. We can have a debate on Second Amendment rights and everything like that, but the amendment is clear. At some level, you have a right to own a firearm. Majority of countries do not have that. To be an American is also unique in the fact, and again, these are all things that are lost among my generation, things that they don't actually appreciate. They neglect, and if anything, fight against actively. They neglect the idea that America is the only country you can move to and genuinely become an American. You could move to China. I could move to China. I wouldn't be Chinese. Move to Germany. Wouldn't be German. I could move to Africa. Any African country wouldn't make me African. Mexico wouldn't be Mexican. But anybody can move to America and become American. Do you realize how profound that is? We're the only country that you can do that. You could become a German citizen. You could become a Chinese citizen, everything like that. But it does not make you Chinese or German or African, anything like that. America is the only place you can do that. And I talk about Uber drivers sometimes because I always get into talking with them about like what I do and everything. And I had an Uber driver that I talked about on the show a few weeks ago who he was driving me and he was like, I'm pretty sure he was a Ugandan immigrant. And he came here like 30 years ago. And he talked about the reason he moved here is he was living the American dream. He wanted to live the American dream. And he believes he's living it. And he says it's at stake with some of the people that are getting elected to office, but he believes he's living it. America is the greatest nation on the face of this planet. Does it have its flaws? Absolutely. But it is the greatest nation on the face of this planet. I firmly believe that. And he is a success story of that. My Uber driver, my Ugandan Uber driver I had a few weeks ago. Because he believes it too. And a lot of people across the world believe it. But then why is it that we have people in our own country that don't believe it? Well, it's because they're indoctrinated to believe so. And the ironic thing is they use their free speech, which is uniquely American. Pretty much every other country has in some level a speech code of things that you can and cannot say. And in America, the only exceptions to free speech are if you are directly calling to violence. Like you are saying, I am going to hurt X. I am going to currently, or we all need to go and hurt X or burn X down, something like that. Direct calls to violence or clear obscenity, which clear obscenity is still vague, but the Supreme Court is still kind of out on that one. But those are the only rules to free speech. And that's why I'm against this. And so this is tying it all together because I know I just went on a big rant. America is uniquely exceptional, and a lot of that has to do with free speech. And in France, even some conservative commentators were cheering on French Interior Minister Gerald Darmanin. I don't know how to say it. I'm not French. But he has banned pro-Palestine protests that could, in fears that it could lead to violence among rising anti-Semitism in Europe as the conflict between Israel and Hamas continues. France has a Jewish community of almost 500,000, the largest in Europe. The BBC reports, while its Muslim community is among the largest in Europe with an estimated 5 million people. So, of course, you have some people that are up in arms about this policy decision to ban pro-Palestine protests in France because they have like 10 times the amount of Muslim community as they do Jewish. However, I'm actually, and while, again, many conservative commentators have come out and been in support of this, I'm against this. Why? Well, I circle back to what I just said, to Jen Psaki it real quick. To circle back, I am very, very pro-free speech. I do not agree with anybody who is pro-Palestine. I would be a part of a counter-protest to support Israel. But unless there is a direct call to violence or clear obscenity, then there should be allowed pro-Palestinian protests. We wouldn't have a ban like this in America because of the First Amendment. I believe the only way to root out bad ideas and to expose people to bad ideas, to recognize what the good ideas are, is to allow those bad ideas to be shown and advocated for, even by idiots. Allow the idiots to advocate for idiocy. Allow the queers for Palestine, the chicken for KFC. Allow them. Because that is the only way that we will truly expose the atrocities in this world and just bad ideas, period. And I want to be clear about my definitions here. Direct call, the only exceptions to free speech, direct calls to violence and obscenity. In my terms, again, the Supreme Court has been fairly clear on direct calls to violence. Even things like when Australia's protest, where they were screaming, "Gas the Jews," which again, awful thing to chant, but it still only nears the line of a direct call to violence. It needs to be very direct for it to not fall under free speech. And that would be, I or we should go do X, or are going to do X, or need to do X. And when I say X, you can insert any violent call there, burn something down, kill somebody, anything like that. That is a direct call to violence. Obscenity is the one that's a little bit more vague. An example of obscenity that I know would 100% cross the line past free speech, which for some reason people don't get arrested for, is public nudity. Some people get arrested for it, but if you're at a pride parade in front of children, apparently that doesn't fall under it. But to me, those are my terms, because I want to define my terms. I feel like that's a lot of times when you have political discussions, people do not define their terms. So again, why am I against France banning pro-Palestine rallies and demonstrations? Well, 18th century philosopher Voltaire once said this quote. He said, "I disagree with what you say, but I will defend to the death your right to say it." Once again, I disagree with what you say, but I will defend to your death with your right to say it. Because as soon as anybody in America starts supporting banning speech that they find even atrocious, unless it calls to violence, again, unless it calls to violence or is obscene, as soon as we start doing that, what other speech can we start banning? If we start banning speech we don't like, or speech that even is horrendous, what other speech could we start banning? And that was the exact, back in, I believe it was the late 1960s, early 1970s, if I'm remembering correctly. There was a famous Supreme Court case about those darn Illinois Nazis, where up in Skokie, Illinois, there was a Nazi group, genuine Nazis, that wanted to wear their armbands, have their memorabilia and everything, and they wanted to have a protest. And then they ended up having stuff canceled for it by their locality, people trying to shut it down. And then they ended up taking it to court. They were actually represented by the American Civil Liberties Union, who again denounced the entire idea of Nazism. But then they went to the Supreme Court and supported the right to free speech. Because again, I disagree with what you say, but I will defend to your death for your right to say it, because of how important it is that to understand the slippery slope that can come with banning one thing you don't like and going down the rabbit hole to eventually everything that is considered offensive will not be allowed to be said. And that is why I'm against France, everybody. And also, by the way, as a callback to those darn Illinois Nazis, that's actually also referenced. That entire Supreme Court case is referenced in the iconic film, The Blues Brothers, when the Blues Brothers are driving in their car and they drive right through the protesters, the Illinois Nazis that are then they jump off the bridge and everything. And it's hilarious. Love that movie. And I know I'm 22, everybody, to remind you, but I do love that movie. My dad showed me that. I hate those darn Illinois Nazis, but I disagree with what you say, but I will defend to the death your right to say it. Don't forget that. Voltaire, 18th century philosopher, makes you sound really smart at parties if you can pull that one out your butt. I disagree with what you say, but I will defend to the death with your right to say it. If you support free speech, you support that statement. And you understand what it really means. Everybody, I got to take a break here on the radio. We got one more segment and a little bit more to debrief when it comes to all of this. But thank you so much for tuning in, everybody. Don't forget to check me out on YouTube, Facebook, Twitch, Twitter, Rumble, all that fun stuff. And keep on listening. We still got more here on Speechless. We'll be right back. God bless you. God bless America. And I'll be right back. Okay, let's see these comments. I know I went all over in that last one. I have no idea, Oklahoma Chicken Cam. Do you guys want me to bring a flat earther on the show? I know flat earthers. I could bring them on the show. I think it'd be fascinating. I could do it. Let me know. Elon is an African American. He's the richest African American. This is. I don't really want to take any refugees right now, period, in America. Primarily for the fact that we have it's objective. We have a crisis at our southern border. Even Democrats will recognize that the amount of people that we have coming in, we've basically taken, those are essentially refugees to an extent. And many are ones that wouldn't even have refugee status because they're military age men. So the way I see it, I don't want to take any refugees. That's where I'm at with it. Let's get our own stuff under control. But I wouldn't be against encouraging European countries to take them if they want to. Exactly, guillotine. Agree with this, DG. Yep, love me some Blues Brothers. Please no. I assume that's in reference to the into the flat earther debate. See, my thing with flat earthers, because I've had like I'd be interested in this. I have never heard this story. But I'd be very interested because I've had conversations with flat earthers about flat earth, and it always boils down to me being like, why do you care so much? Why do you care so much? And I tend to keep getting back to that question because my whole thing is like, even if you believe the earth is flat, how is that going to change your day to day? Like, even if the world figured out tomorrow that the earth was flat, if that's what came out, they're like, sorry, our science had been wrong. We did have some cases where we lied to you in the past. Even if that was the case, even if it was a flat earther's wet dream and that's what happened, well, how would that, how much would that really change? Okay, maybe the lies that we had gotten from the government, maybe, and it does call a lot of things into question, but I don't need the earth being flat to show me that the government lies to me. I already know the government lies to me all the time. Don't wear a mask, wear a mask, wear 2 masks, all of that stuff. JFK. We basically have it confirmed that JFK was killed by the CIA. But we know the government lies to us. I don't need the flat earth. That's my biggest thing with that. That's my little rant. My parents and I decided to go take pictures of me for memories. One of them was a campus bagel shop. I used it on my profile picture Twitter. I then went off against some Nazis on Twitter for denying on the Holocaust because I have a big nose and I like bagels. They think I'm Jewish. That's really funny. That's awful, but it's really funny. Oh my God, that's funny. That's funny. Thank you for sharing, Connor. I appreciate that. Because globalists can no longer be called globalists if the earth is flat. Ha! That's funny. I'm going to use that. Rita. I love that. Genius. Globalist. What are they called? Flatists. I'm going to ask, because I know people that are like super big flat earthers, and they are like always use the term globalist too. My God, you just gave me like a killer line. Line of the week, everybody, right there. Rita, Illinois wins line of the week. Thank you, Rita. I appreciate you. All right, we're going to wrap this up in the next segment. Nothing's going to break my stride. Nothing's going to slow me down. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. I'm your host, Kev Phares, 22-year-old conservative college student out of Central Illinois, and you're listening to Speechless on Cities 92.9, the news and talk of Bloomington Normal. But if you want more, because this is my last segment of this week, if you want more, you can go check out more videos that I make off air, and you can watch them on YouTube. All you got to do is look up Speechless with Kev. Should be the first thing that comes up. You'll see my radio face. I always get told I have a face for radio, but now it's a face for YouTube too, apparently. So you can go check them out there. You can also always tune into our live streams at Cities 92.9. Look up Cities 92.9 on Facebook, or Speechless with Kev on Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, Twitter, Rumble, where I stream my shows. And you can check out all that stuff, guys. And I thank you so much for tuning in, because I really do appreciate it. And what have I've been talking about all of today is mainly, obviously, you've been inundated with all the news regarding Hamas terrorists, Israel, the whole conflict over there. And while I think there's a lot to cover with it, on what's going on over there, I've focused a lot more on the American response, and not just American, but global response, and how there are genuinely people that are out there supporting the terrorists and blaming Israel. And I covered this a little bit in a previous segment, but I want to say, when it comes to my belief, and I'm curious on your guys' belief too, don't forget, you can always leave comments on my videos. I encourage you, if you can make it really quick, you can call in at 309-451-9299. But what I want to say is that I am verbally supportive of Israel. I will be verbally supportive of Israel, because while I am not Jewish, Jewish people believe half of what I believe in the Torah. The Torah is the Old Testament. I believe in the Old and New Testament as a Catholic. And so they believe half of what I believe. And I believe that they will protect with having that land. Not only is that land rightfully theirs, I mean, it's essentially been granted for them since the beginning of the calendar. Not only do they have that, they also will protect the Holy Land in the closest way to a Christian way that is feasible. Look, in my ideal world, it would basically be a Christian state, as I believe that really it has a lot more Christian necessity or Christian heritage than just Jewish, because Jewish heritage is a part of it. But Christianity obviously brings in Jesus and the New Testament. However, in the current state that we have, we need to verbally support Israel, and we do need to be there in a worst case scenario to ensure Israel remains the state of that land. But America is in crisis right now. I firmly believe this. We have a crisis at the border. We have an economic crisis. We have several others. We have a social crisis. We have an identity crisis in terms of people not knowing what it actually means to be an American, which I also touched on in the show today. America is in crisis, and we need to get our own, as Dan Bongino would say, we need to get our own shh together. You can't say the full word, but we need to get our own shh together. That's what we need to do. And so, for anybody, when you start hearing Republican politicians, this is what's going to happen. I covered this a little bit on my YouTube channel earlier this week. You're going to start hearing politicians. You have Democrats, which some of the squad, like your Rashida Tlaib, your Ilhan Omars, your AOCs, that have been very, very sympathetic to Hamas and Palestine. You have them. Well, you also have Republicans that are calling for war. You have Lindsey Graham, who says currently we're in a holy war, which is not true. We are not in a war, and we shouldn't be in a holy war because we do have the Establishment Clause in the First Amendment. You have Dan Crenshaw, when asked why he is why he's supporting war, kicks a reporter. No, we should not be getting into a war, because all that will really do, while it might help Israel a bit, it will continue to line the pockets of our politicians through the military-industrial complex, which unfortunately I can't cover the entirety of the military-industrial complex in the rest of this show, everybody. But don't worry, go check out my YouTube and you can see all of it. Let's support Israel verbally, condemn Hamas, Do not support Palestine, everybody, in my opinion. God bless you. God bless America. We'll be back next week with more Speechless. Thank you so much for tuning in. And check me out on YouTube at Speechless Kev. Like, subscribe, share, comment, all that fun stuff. But until next week, everybody, God bless you. God bless America. And we'll be back eventually. Okay, guys, thank you so much for tuning in on YouTube, Facebook, everything like that. Again, don't forget to give this video a like, a comment, a share. I really do appreciate each and every one of you. Yes, Crenshaw did kick a reporter. Actually happened. It was what was deemed a far-right reporter. I forgot who he was reporting for, but he was following Crenshaw around, asking him, why do you support war? And it wasn't like a big swing kick, but you could see him purposefully lunge forward and get the heel of the guy and makes him trip. True story. You can go check it. It's on one of my, I have one video. It's called what your representatives are saying about the Israel-Palestine conflict in that video. And you can just scroll and find the specific thing, or you could go Google it yourself. But I do have my reaction to that in that what your representatives are saying about the Israel-Palestine conflict. Thank you guys again so much for tuning in. Again, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, comment what you think, everything like that. And if you're not watching on YouTube right now and you're watching on something else, go check out the YouTube. Almost to 1,000 subscribers. Would appreciate if you guys would help me get there to that goal. And once again, as I always say to each and every one of you, God bless you. God bless America. And until next time, you've been watching Speechless.